A policeman again, what do you want? A policeman was indeed forcing his way through the crowd. But at that moment, a gentleman in civilian uniform and an overcoat, a solid-looking official of about 50 with a decoration on his neck, which delighted Katerina Ivanovna and had its effect on the policeman, approached and without a word handed her a green 3-ruble note. His face wore a look of genuine sympathy. Katerina Ivanovna took it and gave him a polite, even ceremonious bow. "I thank you, honored sir," she began loftily. "The causes that have induced us take the money, Polenka. You see there are generous and honorable people who are ready to help a poor gentlewoman in distress. You see, honored sir, these orphans of good family, I might even say of aristocratic connections, and that wretch of a general sat eating grouse, and stamped at my disturbing him. 'Your Excellency,' I said, 'protect the orphans, for you knew my late husband, Semyon Zaharovich, and on the very day of his death the basest of scoundrels slandered his only daughter.' 'That policeman again, protect me,' she cried to the official. 'Why is that policeman edging up to me? We have only just run away from one of them. What do you want, fool? It's forbidden in the streets. You mustn't make a disturbance.' 'It's your making a disturbance. It's just the same as if I were grinding an organ. What business is it of yours? You have to get a license for an organ, and you haven't got one, and in that way you collect a crowd. Where do you lodge?' 'What a license?' wailed Katerina Ivanovna. 'I buried my husband today, what need of a license?' 'Calm yourself, madam, calm yourself,' began the official. 'Come along, I will escort you. This is no place for you in the crowd. You are ill.' 'Honored sir, you don't know,' screamed Katerina Ivanovna. 'We are going to the Nevsky. Sonya, Sonya, where is she? She is crying too. What's the matter with you all? Kolya, Lida, where are you going?' she cried suddenly in alarm. 'Oh, silly children, Kolya, Lida, where are they off to?' Kolya and Lida, scared out of their wits by the crowd, and their mother's mad pranks, suddenly seized each other by the hand, and ran off at the sight of the policeman who wanted to take them away somewhere. Weeping and wailing, poor Katerina Ivanovna ran after them. She was a piteous and unseemly spectacle as she ran, weeping and panting for breath. Sonya and Polenka rushed after them. Bring them back, Sonya. Oh, stupid, ungrateful children. Polenka, catch them. It's for your sakes I. She stumbled as she ran and fell down. She's cut herself, she's bleeding. Oh dear, cried Sonya, bending over her. All ran up and crowded around. Raskolnikov and Lebeziatnikov were the first at her side. The official too hastened up, and behind him the policeman who muttered, "Bother," with a gesture of impatience, feeling that the job was going to be a troublesome one. Pass on," he said to the crowd that pressed forward. "She's dying," someone shouted. "She's gone out of her mind," said another. "Lord have mercy upon us," said a woman, crossing herself. "Have they caught the little girl and the boy? They're being brought back, the elder ones got them. Ah, the naughty imps." When they examined Katerina Ivanovna carefully, they saw that she had not cut herself against a stone, as Sonya thought, but that the blood that stained the pavement red was from her chest. "I've seen that before," muttered the official to Raskolnikov and Lebeziatnikov. "That's consumption, the blood flows and chokes the patient. I saw the same thing with a relative of my own not long ago, nearly a pint of blood, all in a minute. What's to be done though, she is dying." This way to my room," Sonya implored. "I live here, see that house the second from here. Come to me, make haste." She turned from one to the other. "Send for the doctor, oh dear." Thanks to the official's efforts, this plan was adopted, the policeman even helping to carry Katerina Ivanovna. She was carried to Sonya's room, almost unconscious, and laid on the bed. The blood was still flowing, but she seemed to be coming to herself. Raskolnikov, Lebeziatnikov, and the official accompanied Sonya into the room and were followed by the policeman, who first drove back the crowd which followed to the very door. Polenka came in holding Kolya and Lida, who were trembling and weeping. Several persons came in too from the Kapernamov's room. The landlord, a lame one-eyed man of strange appearance with whiskers and hair that stood up like a brush, his wife, a woman with an everlastingly scared expression, and several open-mouthed children with wonderstruck faces. Among these, Svidrigailov suddenly made his appearance. Raskolnikov looked at him with surprise, not understanding where he had come from and not having noticed him in the crowd. A doctor and priest were spoken of. The official whispered to Raskolnikov that he thought it was too late now for the doctor, but he ordered him to be sent for. Kapernaumov ran himself. Meanwhile, Katerina Ivanovna had regained her breath. The bleeding ceased for a time. She looked with sick but intent and penetrating eyes at Sonya, who stood pale and trembling, wiping the sweat from her brow with a handkerchief. At last she asked to be raised. They sat her up on the bed, supporting her on both sides. "Where are the children?" she said in a faint voice. "You've brought them, Polenka. Oh, the sillies, why did you run away? Ach." Once more her parched lips were covered with blood. She moved her eyes, looking about her. "So that's how you live, Sonya. Never once have I been in your room." She looked at her with a face of suffering. "We have been your ruin, Sonya. Polenka, Lida, Kalia, come here. Well, here they are, Sonya, take them all. I hand them over to you. I've had enough, the ball is over. Cough, lay me down, let me die in peace." They laid her back on the pillow. "What, the priest? I don't want him. You haven't got a ruble to spare. I have no sins. God must forgive me without that. He knows how I have suffered, and if he won't forgive me, I don't care." She sank more and more into uneasy delirium. At times she shuddered, turned her eyes from side to side, recognized everyone for a minute, but at once sank into delirium again. Her breathing was hoarse and difficult. There was a sort of rattle in her throat. "I said to him, Your Excellency," she ejaculated, gasping after each word. "That Amalia Ludwigovna, Lida, Kalia, hands on your hips, make haste. Glisses, glisses, pas de basque, tap with your heels, be a graceful child. Du hast Diamant und Perlen." What next? That's the thing to sing. "Du hast die Skonsten Augen Madchen," was whilst du Mayer. What an idea, was whilst du Mayer, what things the fool invents. Ah, yes. In the heat of midday, in the Vale of Dagestan. Ah, how I loved it. I loved that song to distraction, Polenka. Your father, you know, used to sing it when we were engaged. Oh, those days. Oh, that's the thing for us to sing. How does it go? I've forgotten. Remind me, how was it? She was violently excited and tried to sit up. At last, in a horribly hoarse, broken voice, she began, shrieking and gasping at every word, with a look of growing terror. "In the heat of midday, in the Vale of Dagestan, with lead in my breast." "Your Excellency," she wailed suddenly with a heartrending scream and a flood of tears, "protect the orphans, you have been their father's guest. One may say aristocratic." She started, regaining consciousness, and gazed at all with a sort of terror, but at once recognized Sonya. "Sonya, Sonya," she articulated softly and caressingly, as though surprised to find her there. "Sonya, darling, are you here too?" They lifted her up again. "Enough, it's over. Farewell, poor thing, I am done for, I am broken," she cried with vindictive despair, and her head fell heavily back on the pillow. She sank into unconsciousness again, but this time it did not last long. Her pale, yellow, wasted face dropped back, her mouth fell open, her leg moved convulsively, she gave a deep, deep sigh and died. Sonya fell upon her, flung her arms about her, and remained motionless with her head pressed to the dead woman's wasted bosom. Polenka threw herself at her mother's feet, kissing them and weeping violently. Though Kalia and Lida did not understand what had happened, they had a feeling that it was something terrible. They put their hands on each other's little shoulders, stared straight at one another, and both at once opened their mouths and began screaming. They were both still in their fancy dress, one in a turban, the other in the cap with the ostrich feather. And how did the certificate of merit come to be on the bed beside Katerina Ivanovna? It lay there by the pillow. Raskolnikov saw it. He walked away to the window. Lebeziatnikov skipped up to him. "She is dead," he said. "Rodion Romanovich, I must have 2 words with you," said Svidrigailov, coming up to them. Lebeziatnikov at once made room for him, and delicately withdrew. Svidrigailov drew Raskolnikov further away. "I will undertake all the arrangements, the funeral and that. You know it's a question of money, and as I told you, I have plenty to spare. I will put those 2 little ones and Polenka into some good orphan asylum, and I will settle 1,500 rubles to be paid to each on coming of age, so that Sofya Semyonovna need have no anxiety about them. And I will pull her out of the mud too, for she is a good girl, isn't she? So tell Avditia Romanovna that is how I am spending her 10,000. "What is your motive for such benevolence?" asked Raskolnikov. "Ah, you skeptical person," laughed Svidrigailov. "I told you I had no need of that money. Won't you admit that it's simply done from humanity? She was a louse, you know. He pointed to the corner where the dead woman lay. Was she, like some old pawnbroker woman? Come, you'll agree, is Lesion to go on living and doing wicked things, or is she to die? And if I didn't help them, Polenka would go the same way. He said this with an air of a sort of gay winking slyness, keeping his eyes fixed on Raskolnikov, who turned white and cold, hearing his own phrases, spoken to Sonya. He quickly stepped back and looked wildly at Svidrigailov. How do you know? He whispered, hardly able to breathe. Why, I lodge here at Madame Reslik's, the other side of the wall. Here is Kapernaumov, and there lives Madame Reslik, an old and devoted friend of mine. I am a neighbor. You? Yes, continued Svidrigailov, shaking with laughter. I assure you on my honor, dear Rodion Romanovich, that you have interested me enormously. I told you we should become friends, I foretold it. Well, here we have. And you will see what an accommodating person I am. You'll see that you can get on with me. Part 6. Chapter 1. A strange period began for Raskolnikov. It was as though a fog had fallen upon him and wrapped him in a dreary solitude from which there was no escape. Recalling that period long after, he believed that his mind had been clouded at times, and that it had continued so, with intervals, till the final catastrophe. He was convinced that he had been mistaken about many things at that time, for instance as to the date of certain events. Anyway, when he tried later on to piece his recollections together, he learned a great deal about himself from what other people told him. He had mixed up incidents, and had explained events as due to circumstances which existed only in his imagination. At times he was a prey to agonies of morbid uneasiness, amounting sometimes to panic. But he remembered, too, moments, hours, perhaps whole days of complete apathy, which came upon him as a reaction from his previous terror, and might be compared with the abnormal insensibility, sometimes seen in the dying. He seemed to be trying in that latter stage to escape from a full and clear understanding of his position. Certain essential facts which required immediate consideration were particularly irksome to him. How glad he would have been to be free from some cares, the neglect of which would have threatened him with complete, inevitable ruin. He was particularly worried about Svidrigailov. He might be said to be permanently thinking of Svidrigailov. From the time of Svidrigailov's two menacing and unmistakable words in Sonya's room at the moment of Katerina Ivanovna's death, the normal working of his mind seemed to break down. But although this new fact caused him extreme uneasiness, Raskolnikov was in no hurry for an explanation of it. At times, finding himself in a solitary and remote part of the town, in some wretched eating house, sitting alone lost in thought, hardly knowing how he had come there, he suddenly thought of Svidrigailov. He recognized suddenly, clearly, and with dismay that he ought at once to come to an understanding with that man, and to make what terms he could. Walking outside the city gates one day, he positively fancied that they had fixed a meeting there, that he was waiting for Svidrigailov. Another time he woke up before daybreak lying on the ground under some bushes, and could not at first understand how he had come there. But during the 2 or 3 days after Katerina Ivanovna's death, he had 2 or 3 times met Svidrigailov at Sonya's lodging, where he had gone aimlessly for a moment. They exchanged a few words, and made no reference to the vital subject, as though they were tacitly agreed not to speak of it for a time. Katerina Ivanovna's body was still lying in the coffin. Svidrigailov was busy making arrangements for the funeral. Sonya, too, was very busy. At their last meeting, Svidrigailov informed Raskolnikov that he had made an arrangement, and a very satisfactory one, for Katerina Ivanovna's children, that he had, through certain connections, succeeded in getting hold of certain personages, by whose help the 3 orphans could be at once placed in very suitable institutions. That the money he had settled on them had been of great assistance, as it is much easier to place orphans with some property than destitute ones. He said something too about Sonya, and promised to come himself in a day or 2 to see Raskolnikov, mentioning that he would like to consult with him, that there were things they must talk over. This conversation took place in the passage on the stairs. Svidrigailov looked intently at Raskolnikov and suddenly, after a brief pause, dropping his voice, asked, "But how is it, Rodion Romanovich, you don't seem yourself? You look and you listen, but you don't seem to understand. Cheer up, we'll talk things over. I am only sorry I've so much to do of my own business and other people's. Ah, Rodion Romanovich," he added suddenly, "what all men need is fresh air, more than anything." He moved to one side to make way for the priest and server who were coming up the stairs. They had come for the requiem service. By Svidrigailev's orders, it was sung twice a day punctually. Svidrigailov went his way. Raskolnikov stood still a moment, thought, and followed the priest into Sonya's room. He stood at the door. They began quietly, slowly, and mournfully singing the service. From his childhood, the thought of death and the presence of death had something oppressive and mysteriously awful, and it was long since he had heard the requiem service. And there was something else here as well, too awful and disturbing. He looked at the children. They were all kneeling by the coffin. Polenka was weeping. Behind them Sonya prayed, softly and, as it were, timidly weeping. "These last 2 days she hasn't said a word to me, she hasn't glanced at me," Raskolnikov thought suddenly. The sunlight was bright in the room, the incense rose in clouds, the priest read, "Give rest, O Lord." Raskolnikov stayed all through the service. As he blessed them and took his leave, the priest looked round strangely. After the service, Raskolnikov went up to Sonya. She took both his hands and let her head sink on his shoulder. This slight, friendly gesture bewildered Raskolnikov. It seemed strange to him that there was no trace of repugnance, no trace of disgust, no tremor in her hand. It was the furthest limit of self-abnegation, at least so he interpreted it. Sonya said nothing. Raskolnikov pressed her hand and went out. He felt very miserable. If it had been possible to escape to some solitude, he would have thought himself lucky, even if he had to spend his whole life there. But although he had almost always been by himself of late, he had never been able to feel alone. Sometimes he walked out of the town on to the high road. Once he had even reached a little wood. But the lonelier the place was, the more he seemed to be aware of an uneasy presence near him. It did not frighten him, but greatly annoyed him, so that he made haste to return to the town, to mingle with the crowd, to enter restaurants and taverns, to walk in busy thoroughfares. There he felt easier and even more solitary. One day at dusk, he sat for an hour listening to songs in a tavern, and he remembered that he positively enjoyed it. But at last he had suddenly felt the same uneasiness again, as though his conscience smote him. "Here I sit listening to singing, is that what I ought to be doing?" he thought. Yet he felt at once that that was not the only cause of his uneasiness. There was something requiring immediate decision, but it was something he could not clearly understand or put into words. It was a hopeless tangle. No, better the struggle again, better Porfiry again, or Svidrigailov. Better some challenge again, some attack. Yes, yes, he thought. He went out of the tavern and rushed away almost at a run. The thought of Dounia and his mother suddenly reduced him almost to a panic. That night he woke up before morning among some bushes in Krestovsky Island, trembling all over with fever. He walked home, and it was early morning when he arrived. After some hours' sleep the fever left him, but he woke up late, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He remembered that Katerina Ivanovna's funeral had been fixed for that day, and was glad that he was not present at it. Nastasia brought him some food. He ate and drank with appetite, almost with greediness. His head was fresher, and he was calmer than he had been for the last 3 days. He even felt a passing wonder at his previous attacks of panic. The door opened, and Razumihin came in. "Ah, he's eating, then he's not ill," said Razumihin. He took a chair and sat down at the table opposite Raskolnikov. He was troubled and did not attempt to conceal it. He spoke with evident annoyance, but without hurry or raising his voice. He looked as though he had some special fixed determination. "Listen," he began resolutely. "As far as I am concerned, you may all go to hell, but from what I see, it's clear to me that I can't make head or tail of it. Please don't think I've come to ask you questions. I don't want to know, hang it. If you begin telling me your secrets, I dare say I shouldn't stay to listen, I should go away cursing. I have only come to find out once for all whether it's a fact that you are mad. There is a conviction in the air that you are mad, or very nearly so. I admit I've been disposed to that opinion myself, judging from your stupid, repulsive and quite inexplicable actions, and from your recent behavior to your mother and sister. Only a monster or a madman could treat them as you have, so you must be mad. When did you see them last? Just now, haven't you seen them since then? What have you been doing with yourself? Tell me please, I've been to you 3 times already. Your mother has been seriously ill since yesterday. She had made up her mind to come to you. Avditia Romanovna tried to prevent her, she wouldn't hear a word. If he is ill, if his mind is giving way, who can look after him like his mother? She said. We all came here together, we couldn't let her come alone all the way. We kept begging her to be calm. We came in, you weren't here, she sat down and stayed 10 minutes while we stood waiting in silence. She got up and said, if he's gone out, that is, if he is well and has forgotten his mother, it's humiliating and unseemly for his mother to stand at his door begging for kindness. She returned home and took to her bed. Now she is in a fever. I see, she said, that he has time for his girl. She means by your girl Sofia Semyonovna, your betrothed or your mistress, I don't know. I went at once to Sofia Semyonovna's, for I wanted to know what was going on. I looked round, I saw the coffin, the children crying and Sofia Semyonovna trying them on mourning dresses. No sign of you. I apologized, came away, and reported to Avditia Romanovna. So that's all nonsense and you haven't got a girl. The most likely thing is that you are mad. But here you sit, guzzling boiled beef as though you'd not had a bite for 3 days. Though as far as that goes, madmen eat too, but though you have not said a word to me yet. You're not mad, that I'd swear. Above all, you're not mad. So you may go to hell all of you, for there's some mystery, some secret about it, and I don't intend to worry my brains over your secrets. So I've simply come to swear at you, he finished, getting up to relieve my mind. And I know what to do now. What do you mean to do now? What business is it of yours, what I mean to do? You are going in for a drinking bout. How did you know? Why, it's pretty plain. Razumihin paused for a minute. You always have been a very rational person, and you've never been mad, never, he observed suddenly with warmth. You're right, I shall drink, goodbye. And he moved to go out. I was talking with my sister, the day before yesterday, I think it was, about you, Razumihin. About me, but where can you have seen her the day before yesterday? Razumihin stopped short and even turned a little pale. One could see that his heart was throbbing slowly and violently. She came here by herself, sat there and talked to me. She did. Yes. What did you say to her, I mean about me? I told her you were a very good, honest and industrious man. I didn't tell her you love her, because she knows that herself. She knows that herself. Well, it's pretty plain. Wherever I might go, whatever happened to me, you would remain to look after them. I, so to speak, give them into your keeping, Razumihin. I say this because I know quite well how you love her, and am convinced of the purity of your heart. I know that she too may love you and perhaps does love you already. Now decide for yourself, as you know best, whether you need go in for a drinking bout or not. Radia, you see, well, damn it, but where do you mean to go? Of course, if it's all a secret, never mind. But I shall find out the secret, and I am sure that it must be some ridiculous nonsense and that you've made it all up. Anyway, you are a capital fellow, a capital fellow. That was just what I wanted to add, only you interrupted, that was a very good decision of yours not to find out these secrets. Leave it to time, don't worry about it. You'll know it all in time when it must be. Yesterday a man said to me that what a man needs is fresh air, fresh air, fresh air. I mean to go to him directly to find out what he meant by that. Razumihin stood lost in thought and excitement, making a silent conclusion. He's a political conspirator, he must be, and he's on the eve of some desperate step, that's certain. It can only be that, and Downia knows, he thought suddenly. So Avditia Romanovna comes to see you, he said, weighing each syllable, and you're going to see a man who says we need more air, and so of course that letter. That too must have something to do with it, he concluded to himself. What letter? She got a letter today. It upset her very much indeed, too much so. I began speaking of you, she begged me not to, then she said that perhaps we should very soon have to part. Then she began warmly thanking me for something, then she went to her room and locked herself in. She got a letter, Raskolnikov asked thoughtfully. Yes, and you didn't know, They were both silent. Goodbye, Rodion, there was a time, brother, when I… Never mind goodbye, you see there was a time. Well, goodbye, I must be off too, I am not going to drink. There's no need now. That's all stuff. He hurried out, but when he had almost closed the door behind him, he suddenly opened it again and said, looking away. Oh, by the way, do you remember that murder, you know Porfiry that old woman? Do you know the murderer has been found, he has confessed and given the proofs. It's one of those very workmen, the painter, only fancy. Do you remember I defended them here? Would you believe it? All that scene of fighting and laughing with his companions on the stairs, while the porter and the 2 witnesses were going up, he got up on purpose to disarm suspicion. The cunning, the presence of mind of the young dog, one can hardly credit it, but it's his own explanation, he has confessed it all. And what a fool I was about it. Well, he's simply a genius of hypocrisy and resourcefulness in disarming the suspicions of the lawyers, so there's nothing much to wonder at, I suppose. Of course people like that are always possible. And the fact that he couldn't keep up the character but confessed makes him easier to believe in. But what a fool I was. I was frantic on their side. Tell me please, from whom did you hear that, and why does it interest you so? Raskolnikov asked with unmistakable agitation. What next? You ask me why it interests me. Well, I heard it from Porfiry, among others. It was from him I heard almost all about it. From Porfiry. From Porfiry. What did he say? Raskolnikov asked in dismay. He gave me a capital explanation of it. Psychologically, after his fashion. He explained it himself. Yes, goodbye, I'll tell you all about it another time, but now I'm busy. There was a time when I fancied. But no matter, another time. What need is there for me to drink now? You have made me drunk without wine. I am drunk, Radia. Goodbye, I'm going. I'll come again very soon. He went out. He's a political conspirator, there's not a doubt about it, Razumihin decided as he slowly descended the stairs. And he's drawn his sister in, that's quite in keeping with Avditia Romanovna's character. There are interviews between them. She hinted at it too. So many of her words, and hints, bear that meaning. And how else can all this tangle be explained? And I was almost thinking, good heavens, what I thought. Yes, I took leave of my senses and I wronged him. It was his doing, under the lamp in the corridor that day. Phoo, what a crude, nasty, vile idea on my part. Nikolay is a brick for confessing. And how clear it all is now. His illness then, all his strange actions. Before this, in the university, how morose he used to be, how gloomy. But what's the meaning now of that letter? There's something in that too, perhaps. Whom was it from, I suspect? No, I must find out. He thought of Daunia, realizing all he had heard, and his heart throbbed, and he suddenly broke into a run. As soon as Razumihin went out, Raskolnikov got up, turned to the window, walked into one corner and then into another, as though forgetting the smallness of his room, and sat down again on the sofa. He felt, so to speak, renewed. Again the struggle, so a means of escape had come. Yes, a means of escape had come. It had been too stifling, too cramping, the burden had been too agonizing. A lethargy had come upon him at times. From the moment of the scene with Nikolay at Porfiry's, he had been suffocating, penned in without hope of escape. After Nikolay's confession, on that very day had come the scene with Sonya. His behavior and his last words had been utterly unlike anything he could have imagined beforehand. He had grown feebler, instantly and fundamentally. And he had agreed at the time with Sonya, he had agreed in his heart he could not go on living alone with such a thing on his mind. And Svidrigailov was a riddle. He worried him, that was true, but somehow not on the same point. He might still have a struggle to come with Svidrigailov. Svidrigailov, too, might be a means of escape, but Porfiry was a different matter. And so Porfiry himself had explained it to Razumihin, had explained it psychologically. He had begun bringing in his damned psychology again. Porfiry. But to think that Porfiry should for one moment believe that Nikolay was guilty, after what had passed between them before Nikolay's appearance, after that tete-a-tete interview, which could have only one explanation. During those days, Raskolnikov had often recalled passages in that scene with Porfiry. He could not bear to let his mind rest on it. Such words, such gestures had passed between them, they had exchanged such glances. Things had been said in such a tone and had reached such a pass that Nikolay, whom Porfiry had seen through at the first word, at the first gesture, could not have shaken his conviction. And to think that even Razumihin had begun to suspect. The scene in the corridor under the lamp had produced its effect then. He had rushed to Porfiry. But what had induced the latter to receive him like that? What had been his object in putting Razumihin off with Nikolay? He must have some plan, there was some design, but what was it? It was true that a long time had passed since that morning, too long a time, and no sight nor sound of Porfiry. Well, that was a bad sign. Raskolnikov took his cap and went out of the room, still pondering. It was the first time for a long while that he had felt clear in his mind, at least. I must settle Svidrigailov, he thought, and as soon as possible. He, too, seems to be waiting for me to come to him of my own accord. And at that moment, there was such a rush of hate in his weary heart that he might have killed either of those two, Porfiry or Svidrigailov. At least he felt that he would be capable of doing it later, if not now. We shall see, he repeated to himself. But no sooner had he opened the door than he stumbled upon Porfiry himself in the passage. He was coming in to see him. Raskolnikov was dumbfounded for a minute, but only for 1 minute. Strange to say, he was not very much astonished at seeing Porfiry and scarcely afraid of him. He was simply startled, but was instantly on his guard. Perhaps this will mean the end, but how could Porfiry have approached so quietly, like a cat, so that he had heard nothing? Could he have been listening at the door? You didn't expect a visitor, Rodion Romanovich, Porfiry explained, laughing. I've been meaning to look in a long time. I was passing by and thought, why not go in for 5 minutes? Are you going out? I won't keep you long. Just let me have one cigarette. Sit down, Porfiry Petrovich, sit down. Raskolnikov gave his visitor a seat with so pleased and friendly an expression that he would have marveled at himself if he could have seen it. The last moment had come, the last drops had to be drained. So a man will sometimes go through half an hour of mortal terror with a brigand, yet when the knife is at his throat at last, he feels no fear. Raskolnikov seated himself directly facing Porfiry and looked at him without flinching. Porfiry screwed up his eyes and began lighting a cigarette. Speak, speak, seemed as though it would burst from Raskolnikov's heart. Come, why don't you speak? Chapter 2. Ah, these cigarettes, Porfiry Petrovich ejaculated at last, having lighted one. They are pernicious, positively pernicious, and yet I can't give them up. I cough, I begin to have tickling in my throat and a difficulty in breathing. You know I am a coward. I went lately to Dr. B.N. He always gives at least half an hour to each patient. He positively laughed looking at me, he sounded me. Tobacco's bad for you, he said. Your lungs are affected. But how am I to give it up? What is there to take its place? I don't drink, that's the mischief, he, that I don't. Everything is relative, Rodion Romanovich, everything is relative. Why, he's playing his professional tricks again, Raskolnikov thought with disgust. All the circumstances of their last interview suddenly came back to him, and he felt a rush of the feeling that had come upon him then. I came to see you the day before yesterday in the evening, you didn't know, Porfiry Petrovich went on, looking round the room. I came into this very room. I was passing by, just as I did today, and I thought I'd return your call. I walked in as your door was wide open. I looked round, waited and went out without leaving my name with your servant. Don't you lock your door. Raskolnikov's face grew more and more gloomy. Porfiry seemed to guess his state of mind. I've come to have it out with you, Rodion Romanovich, my dear fellow. I owe you an explanation and must give it to you, he continued with a slight smile, just patting Raskolnikov's knee. But almost at the same instant, a serious and careworn look came into his face. To his surprise, Raskolnikov saw a touch of sadness in it. He had never seen and never suspected such an expression in his face. A strange scene passed between us last time we met, Rodion Romanovich. Our first interview, too, was a strange one, but then, and one thing after another. This is the point. I have perhaps acted unfairly to you, I feel it. Do you remember how we parted? Your nerves were unhinged and your knees were shaking, and so were mine. And you know our behavior was unseemly, even ungentlemanly. And yet we are gentlemen, above all, in any case, gentlemen, that must be understood. Do you remember what we came to? And it was quite indecorous. What is he up to? What does he take me for? Raskolnikov asked himself in amazement, raising his head and looking with open eyes on Porfiry. I've decided openness is better between us, Porfiry Petrovich went on, turning his head away and dropping his eyes, as though unwilling to disconcert his former victim and as though disdaining his former wiles. Yes, such suspicions and such scenes cannot continue for long. Nikolay put a stop to it, or I don't know what we might not have come to. That damned workman was sitting at the time in the next room. Can you realize that? You know that, of course, and I am aware that he came to you afterwards. But what you supposed then was not true. I had not sent for anyone. I had made no kind of arrangements. You ask why I hadn't. What shall I say to you? It had all come upon me so suddenly. I had scarcely sent for the porters. You noticed them as you went out, I dare say. An idea flashed upon me. I was firmly convinced at the time, you see, Rodion Romanovich. Come, I thought, even if I let one thing slip for a time, I shall get hold of something else. I shan't lose what I want anyway. You are nervously irritable, Rodion Romanovich, by temperament. It's out of proportion with other qualities of your heart and character, which I flatter myself I have to some extent divined. Of course I did reflect even then that it does not always happen that a man gets up and blurts out his whole story. It does happen sometimes, if you make a man lose all patience, though even then it's rare. I was capable of realizing that. If I only had a fact, I thought, the least little fact to go upon, something I could lay hold of, something tangible, not merely psychological. For if a man is guilty, you must be able to get something substantial out of him. One may reckon upon most surprising results indeed. I was reckoning on your temperament, Rodion Romanovich, on your temperament above all things. I had great hopes of you at that time. But what are you driving at now? Raskolnikov muttered at last, asking the question without thinking. What is he talking about? He wondered distractedly. Does he really take me to be innocent? What am I driving at? I've come to explain myself. I consider it my duty, so to speak. I want to make clear to you how the whole business, the whole misunderstanding arose. I've caused you a great deal of suffering, Rodion Romanovich. I am not a monster. I understand what it must mean for a man who has been unfortunate, but who is proud, imperious and above all, impatient to have to bear such treatment. I regard you in any case as a man of noble character, and not without elements of magnanimity, though I don't agree with all your convictions. I wanted to tell you this first, frankly and quite sincerely, for above all I don't want to deceive you. When I made your acquaintance, I felt attracted by you. Perhaps you will laugh at my saying so. You have a right to. I know you disliked me from the first, and indeed you've no reason to like me. You may think what you like, but I desire now to do all I can to efface that impression, and to show that I am a man of heart and conscience. I speak sincerely. Porfiry Petrovich made a dignified pause. Raskolnikov felt a rush of renewed alarm. The thought that Porfiry believed him to be innocent began to make him uneasy. It's scarcely necessary to go over everything in detail, Porfiry Petrovich went on. Indeed, I could scarcely attempt it. To begin with, there were rumors. Through whom, how, and when those rumors came to me, and how they affected you, I need not go into. My suspicions were aroused by a complete accident, which might just as easily not have happened. What was it? I believe there is no need to go into that either. Those rumors and that accident led to one idea in my mind. I admit it openly, for one may as well make a clean breast of it. I was the first to pitch on you. The old woman's notes on the pledges and the rest of it, that all came to nothing. Yours was one of 100. I happened, too, to hear of the scene at the office, from a man who described it capitally, unconsciously reproducing the scene with great vividness. It was just one thing after another. Rodion Romanovich, my dear fellow, how could I avoid being brought to certain ideas? From 100 rabbits you can't make a horse, 100 suspicions don't make a proof, as the English proverb says, but that's only from the rational point of view. You can't help being partial, for after all a lawyer is only human. I thought, too, of your article in that journal. Do you remember, on your first visit we talked of it? I jeered at you at the time, but that was only to lead you on. I repeat, Rodion Romanovich, you are ill and impatient. That you were bold, headstrong, in earnest, and had felt a great deal I recognized long before. I too have felt the same, so that your article seemed familiar to me. It was conceived on sleepless nights, with a throbbing heart, in ecstasy and suppressed enthusiasm. And that proud suppressed enthusiasm in young people is dangerous. I jeered at you then, but let me tell you that, as a literary amateur, I am awfully fond of such first essays, full of the heat of youth. There is a mistiness and a chord vibrating in the mist. Your article is absurd and fantastic, but there's a transparent sincerity, a youthful incorruptible pride and the daring of despair in it. It's a gloomy article, but that's what's fine in it. I read your article and put it aside, thinking as I did so, that man won't go the common way. Well, I ask you after that as a preliminary, how could I help being carried away by what followed? Oh dear, I am not saying anything, I am not making any statement now. I simply noted it at the time. What is there in it? I reflected. There's nothing in it, that is really nothing, and perhaps absolutely nothing. And it's not at all the thing for the prosecutor to let himself be carried away by notions. Here I have Nikolay on my hands with actual evidence against him. You may think what you like of it, but it's evidence. He brings in his psychology, too. One has to consider him, too, for it's a matter of life and death. Why am I explaining this to you? That you may understand, and not blame my malicious behavior on that occasion. It was not malicious, I assure you, he. Do you suppose I didn't come to search your room at the time? I did, he. I was here when you were lying ill in bed, not officially, not in my own person, but I was here. Your room was searched to the last thread at the first suspicion, but umsonst. I thought to myself, now that man will come of himself, and quickly too. If he's guilty, he's sure to come. Another man wouldn't, but he will. And you remember how Mr. Razumihin began discussing the subject with you. We arranged that to excite you, so we purposely spread rumors, that he might discuss the case with you, and Razumihin is not a man to restrain his indignation. Mr. Zametov was tremendously struck by your anger and your open daring. Think of blurting out in a restaurant, "I killed her." It was too daring, too reckless. I thought so myself. If he is guilty, he will be a formidable opponent. That was what I thought at the time. I was expecting you, but you simply bowled Zametov over and… Well, you see, it all lies in this, that this damnable psychology can be taken two ways. Well, I kept expecting you, and so it was, you came. My heart was fairly throbbing. Ach. Now why need you have come? Your laughter, too, as you came in, do you remember? I saw it all plain as daylight, but if I hadn't expected you so specially, I should not have noticed anything in your laughter. You see what influence a mood has, Mr. Razumihin then. Ah, that stone under which the things were hidden. I seemed to see it somewhere in a kitchen garden. It was in a kitchen garden, you told Zametov, and afterwards you repeated that in my office. And when we began picking your article to pieces, how you explained it. One could take every word of yours in two senses, as though there were another meaning hidden. So in this way, Rodion Romanovich, I reached the furthest limit, and knocking my head against a post, I pulled myself up, asking myself what I was about. After all, I said, you can take it all in another sense if you like, and it's more natural so, indeed. I couldn't help admitting it was more natural. I was bothered. No, I'd better get hold of some little fact, I said. So when I heard of the bell ringing, I held my breath and was all in a tremor. Here's my little fact, thought I, and I didn't think it over, I simply wouldn't. I would have given 1,000 rubles at that minute to have seen you with my own eyes, when you walked 100 paces beside that workman, after he had called you murderer to your face, and you did not dare to ask him a question all the way. And then what about your trembling? What about your bell ringing in your illness, in semi-delirium? And so, Rodion Romanovich, can you wonder that I played such pranks on you? And what made you come at that very minute? Someone seemed to have sent you, by Jove. And if Nikolay had not parted us… And do you remember Nikolay at the time? Do you remember him clearly? It was a thunderbolt, a regular thunderbolt. And how I met him. I didn't believe in the thunderbolt, not for a minute. You could see it for yourself. And how could I? Even afterwards, when you had gone and he began making very, very plausible answers on certain points, so that I was surprised at him myself, even then I didn't believe his story. You see what it is to be as firm as a rock. No, thought I, Morgenfrau. What has Nikolay got to do with it? Razumihin told me just now that you think Nikolay guilty, and had yourself assured him of it.